All right, here we are. So I've got Brandon here with me, and Brandon just finished up a 1-to-1 6-month somatic coaching program together. And he's got an incredible story and has generously offered to share that. And yeah, super excited to hear about your evolution and just to really land it and celebrate even further. And for all the folks that it's going to be really meaningful to hear that journey.
Cool. Yeah. So last fall, I had gotten to a point where with my career and my job, with I've kind of dealt with anxiety for probably most of my adult life, and it usually gets a lot worse in different positions I've been at work, and it's just kind of followed me for my whole career since I left college. And it kind of ebbs and flows where like sometimes I'll get to a point where I've actually like just been the main driver for me to change a job. And so it's been something where like I've been more of someone reacting to some things I've never really felt like I knew how to control. And a lot of it had been tied to confidence and kind of belief in myself. And so many times I'd be very hypersensitive and very reactive to my environment at work, and especially people that I worked with, and even more specifically people that I reported to or I felt like I needed to impress. And I work in a pretty fast-paced, stressful job, a role in my company, in software. And so it just was something that like everywhere I went, it just always felt like I was always in the same kind of rut or situation. And a lot of times I find myself working extreme hours where it was very, very unhealthy and wasn't really having a work-life balance, because I was trying to overcompensate for a lot of the inability for me to be confident in my role and who I was as a person, and trying to protect myself from any potential pushback or feedback or critique for myself. And so I go over above and beyond to really compensate for that. And it came to a head when this fall I just changed new jobs. It was kind of that story that I had told myself and told my wife that this new job and this new position, things will get better because I'll be leaving this really stressful situation, starting fresh. And a lot of other things happened with this new job, but it just actually created a lot more stress than I was anticipating, especially starting in a brand new place where I didn't have a lot of responsibility quite yet. But because of it, I felt like there was a lot of things I wanted to prove for myself and for others. I'm trying to establish myself in that role. And my anxiety just flared up to a point that we were heading off to a family trip that we planned beforehand before moving companies. And I had spent many nights previously working very, very late at night, not really being able to spend a lot of extra time outside of work doing other things. And even while I was on vacation with my family, I still found myself jumping on extra calls, and I couldn't really like remove myself from my job because I was just so anxious. It wasn't that I wanted to be working, it's just I felt like I had to prove myself in many ways. And I just realized that talking to my wife as we were driving down to California, that I just was in a really bad mental and emotional state, that I wasn't even sleeping at night because I felt like I was just letting my family down, her down, because I couldn't figure out how to solve this problem that I have with or I have had with anxiety, and having confidence and just feeling worthy of love. And so on the drive, she mentioned that she had a friend who's JC, who I should reach out to, and if I was willing to jump in and kind of try to see if I can figure out ways to overcome the things I've been battling for a long time. And so that's kind of my entry point into this program that we did together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Appreciate you sharing all that, background and the journey
Mm-hmm.
up to that point. And it sounds like, you had uh, changed things externally
Yeah.
several times,
Mm-hmm.
but the internal wasn't shifting. And so that question of, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so like that was I think the great point was that it was actually one of the lowest points I've ever felt in my life, was when we first met and had the first few sessions. um like I just remember telling my wife that like I felt pretty hopeless, and I didn't feel like there potentially could be a way to get through this. um but it was just cool to start recognizing and learning um, tools, like I think you mentioned, JC, where sometimes I'd have moments where like I feel like externally, like if I was in a very good safe environment, like things went really good, and I could get those glimpses of like, this is who I am and who I want to be all the time. But most of the time, in my head was um, a constant voice of myself saying like I wasn't good enough, or like I did this thing wrong, or people are thinking this way about me, or etc. And so yeah, I think a lot of it was um, me recognizing that there are tools out there for me and others to be able to use and learn how to use them to change feelings, especially feelings and also thoughts, and be able to learn how to take things that we talk a lot about, triggers that I learned about, and how to use like triggers or moments or experiences that usually would then push me to further down this path of self-debasement, or um, again, more of that feeling or thoughts of not feeling adequate or not feeling worthy of love, to understand like how I could actually combat those. And sometimes it was learning how to take a trigger in the moment and then using good tools to reverse that feeling. And a lot of it also was just building up better ways in my life to have the resources to be able to feel in a better spot. Um, and a lot of it was great, is that I haven't had external things change over the time, but a lot of it was just my approach and like ways to learn how to go about when those things happen, which has been very, very empowering, which has been really life changing in many ways for me in the past few months.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get specific around, kind of how you learn that. So, we started, and you might, I don't know if you want to share anything about the rating scale, about any of the particular sessions that we had, what you found to be really transformative in that, maybe surprising to you as an approach.
Yeah, I think I had never really done a lot of um, well, really any meditation in my life before. And so it was something very new to me, but um, we did this initial scale from going, starting out at 2. We were just talking about this just earlier today, and trying to understand like how I felt, kind of like my thoughts around myself. And the scale was like 1 to 9. And so really like I was starting out kind of at the bottom, and that's how I felt. I've really was kind of where I felt like I was as far as like my overall happiness, my overall feeling for myself. And then we did a couple different exercises. One was a pretty deep, powerful meditation that I was able to, with JC's help, go through and visualize what it would like to feel and be in a room of people that surrounded me with love. And we went through that exercise of helping me kind of, I think, take myself out of my own, get out of the way of myself and understand like what does it actually mean or feel like to feel this like unconditional love. And then personify it with even my higher being and understand what those people that like know me the best and I think love me the most would tell me in ways that I feel like I probably in my normal life, but even though I hear those things oftentimes, I have a tendency to discredit those and put caveats to those statements because of my kind of continuous cyclical like way of, I think, my mindset oftentimes I've had in the past. And that was just, honestly, that was like one of the first turning points I've had where like I just felt like for the longest time, like this really deep, powerful love that I could embody myself. And it's been powerful just to like go back to that place when I've needed it to just feel that way. Because I think that's the biggest thing I think I uncovered myself is just the symptoms that I think I've seen with anxiety, with the stress, with not feeling confident. I'm getting my head. A lot of it has just been that internal feeling of self-love that has been, I think, a lot of the power of being able to kind of be in a state of being very unhealthy to where I feel like I am today. And so that was a really powerful thing. And then the other like really powerful, I think, moment that I had was in another session. We worked through this scale system where it took me a while because we actually went through it and I did some homework. But what I loved was actually JC did a specific session with me to be able to actually understand this whole scale system and how my state of being was a 2, where I felt all the emotions, all the feelings, all the thoughts, to where I wanted to be at, and even a further state of like my best self. And we walked myself through having me be at my best self, talking to the person where I was at today or where I was at then, and giving that same type of experience, but it's with my highest self. And understanding like that I could get there. And I think that's when things started to change for me, is like first I really understood and felt this unconditional love and learned how to like, I think, personify it for myself. And then secondly, I was able to understand like there is a way I can feel. I've been there at times, it's not often, but in my history I know that I've been at this, what we call like a 9 of my version 9 of myself. And that I could actually have that as well as another opportunity for me to tell myself that I'm loved when I was at that 2, and having that kind of extra different way of approaching things. And so those are a couple like things I can think of that were really, really pivotal turning points initially when we were going through this, is just being able to see that there is some hope and like see in the horizon, there's a way to get out of where I was at that moment.
Yes. Yeah, and that hope, and it's so beautiful, and it comes from what you were able to experience. It's like, wow, if I could experience this now, this can expand, right?
Yeah.
And I love the wisdom that you pointed to of the root, right? That, okay, there was the symptoms of overworking or trying to prove, prove my worth through overworking, and coming back to what was really the root and sourcing that from the inside. And I'm wondering if you might speak a little to, because a lot of folks don't know somatics, what that means necessarily. I mean, we went all the way down into the detail of dimension of, we looked
Yeah.
at length, we looked at width, we looked at depth. What happens in those dimensions?
Yeah.
Trigger. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. Like that was very new to me. And I think initially when we first had a few sessions, I really wanted to get into what I was anchoring on was a lot of my thoughts. And it was like, specifically, we took some moments that were very triggering to me where I was presenting to key stakeholders in these business settings. And that was very triggering to me where I would get into my head, become very self-aware and also not lack confidence. And so like I would not present myself or be the person I'd want to be as I was presenting to these different people. And I wanted to go through this process of just thinking through stuff. And then what was great is I think that JC was able to take me a step back and say, let's think about and talk about this concept of somatics and being able to understand when those triggers happen of those sensations and feelings, you can actually change the whole experience and almost use somatics in a way that it doesn't necessarily have to be like working through thoughts, which I didn't really think about in the past. And so that was really cool too, because we talked about, we actually went through this exercise of role playing in an experience that I was having multiple times in the past. And, I was actually leading up to another one that I was having in a couple of weeks, and kind of going through that experience and visualizing that together. And what Jason was able to help me walk through is just what that was like to go through the somatics of feeling where it was in my body, both on a width side as a breadth side, and really where I kind of felt this initial kind of sensation that I could feel oftentimes in each of these different moments, that I had the same kind of how I was reacting to these very triggering moments in my life. And then we walked through like what that would be like to actually almost pivot that feeling where I was feeling very much this really small, constricted feeling and sensation in my chest, kind of deeper down in my chest. And that was happening every time that I was having these things, and it would kind of spin out into the other areas of not being able to be confident and present well. And when we were doing that, we took that exercise, and I was able to learn how to take that feeling, and we talked about essentially embracing it. And then so it wasn't necessarily dismissing it or anything else. I was actually like leaning more into it, and then learning how to like take that feeling and then make it very expansive, which is that great feeling or state of like when I am kind of more at that 9 and being that confident, loving of myself version. And it was amazing. Like I found myself, because we talked a lot about too in each of my sessions about trying to figure out how to recognize my triggers, and like it still is a process. But there was one specific moment when I was in this exact kind of situation that we had been practicing. I felt that for the first 5 minutes right before I was about to present, and I felt all the things. There was the same sensations. Luckily, I had some time beforehand to actually present that it took me a second to get into that state, but it was just amazing to feel like this change that I didn't feel like I knew how to tackle before ever in my career. And it's just a small moment, but it was a big deal to be able to take something in a different way of doing things and having that kind of somatic sensations and learning how to use them in a way to like pivot and shift into a good positive place that I wasn't before. So
yeah, that's huge, Brandon. That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's, because we've got, yes, the thoughts, and it's one thing to work with that. And that's an important piece too. It's all part of our human experience, of course. But it's like, wow, you were able to notice like, oh, how am I being in this moment?
Hmm.
And find a way, find a way to embrace it, and it naturally starts to shift.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, amazing, amazing. So, can you speak a little bit to now, where you're at now, what's changed for you, and how you show up? How do
Yeah, yeah, great question. The I think the challenge that I had when I first started was that I'd have these small moments that I felt really, really good, but it was more of a instance or a rarity, I felt like. And that was my whole goal, was to get to a place where I could feel like day to day that almost a majority of the time, really, really good about who I am, in a state where I could love myself and do a lot of things like figure out how to um, give that balance back to myself. So doing things that I found rewarding, or like gave me we talked about resourcing, just the resources to feel like in a healthy spot. Um, and so it was definitely like thinking through things I wanted to do and needed to do and change. Whether it was going outside or going and doing something with a group of friends or with my wife or with my kids, but just little things I think that I've been trying to do more proactively, um, has just really made a huge, huge impact. That, now today, like, I have moments and I have triggers, and I still am not all the way through like the journey where I want to be, where I'm going to be at that final state of the 9. But the fact that, like, when I wrote down my scale, my spectrum, and I said, hey, if I can get to 6, 7, where like on my daily basis, I'm not overthinking every conversation, I'm not second guessing the things I say, I'm not necessarily going into um, any interaction or group setting and being very, very in my head about what people are thinking about me or judging me or how I'm reacting. And I could just let that go a little bit and be able to kind of just feel like who I really want to be, and just interact with people and show up in a better self than I think I've been in the past, because I've been so much in my head and in my emotions that um, it just feels so good, like, just to be able to be in such a better state that um, I don't know, I just feel like I can focus on different and better things and show better in many ways for other people, which has been so helpful and so much better than 6 months ago.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Can you speak more to that? What's next? What you see as possible from this place that back then you might not have even been able to envision?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, for me, it's um kind of like, for me, it's like getting out of a sick bed where I basically didn't feel like I was hardly able to function, and now it's like, wow, I'm actually able to, like, do normal things like walk and everything else, like, physically. Like, that's how I kind of like think about where I was at mentally and emotionally. And so now I just see it as like I see this glimmer of like even getting further along, where I want to be my best self in every sense, and even show up in a totally different way. And so um, my goal is to continue to think about some of the areas that I've started to put more investment in, and even do more there, and even continue to do some of these different exercises and tools that I have. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think just what gets me excited is just seeing the potential that, like, I didn't ever think it was possible. I didn't see a path forward from like where I was at with like my 2. to get to like the 9. But now that I'm in such a better, healthy state, like that's what I get excited about, is that I can see a path forward, and I can see what the things I've been doing these past little bit to get to a much better state, that I can keep focusing on those things, keep using the tools, keep spending more time focusing on the things in my life that enable me to get into a really healthy spot, and doing more of that. And so, yeah, I'm just excited to continue my journey and make the next steps along the way to get to my best self, which is really exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, yeah. How you already are. Yeah, yeah. All the ways you see that you already are. That's amazing. So one more piece I'm curious about. So, given where you were at when you started, I'm curious, were there any hesitations that you had beforehand, and, fears that were there, concerns? If so, what were they, and what allowed you to still say, yeah, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna say
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, I think like that's a good question, because to me, like the concept of somatic and coaching was pretty new. I hadn't ever experienced it before. And so I think with anything that's new or foreign, at least for me, like there's sometimes a hesitancy or fear behind trying to do something different that maybe isn't what you've like wired to think about or programmed to do. And that was actually kind of cool too, was we actually went through one of the first things in our kickoff that we had was JC walked me through some questions, and one of them was like, are you willing, like how invested are you, or how willing are you to push aside maybe some of your previous thoughts or things like that, or beliefs, and explore those. And that helped me kind of think about things. And then also I think I was really in a state where like I just was desperate to try anything and do anything to get healthy and in a better place. And so that's really, I think, what made me just want to just try and do anything, was because I feel like if there's something out there for me to get into a better place in my life, like I want to do that. I want to take that chance. And not everything necessarily may work out, but it was worth it to just try it. And so and I think a lot of it also it was helpful just to go through and take it step by step along the way. And once I saw some of these small things work very well and see the impact that I was starting to have, it was much easier to then go further with things and explore things more. And but yeah, I think that's a great question, because yeah, I definitely had hesitancies. It was new and foreign, and so it definitely was something that it took a little bit of like a leap to get into it and jump into it. But yeah, just very grateful for everything and all the experiences.
Yeah, that openness. That's such a testament coming in with that. Yeah, yeah. Amazing, amazing. And could you speak to, you mentioned like things that are different for you now in terms of how you're able to show up, things that in the past might have threw you. Do you have an example, like a specific one you could share?
Yeah, I think like some of them are as simple as, for me, was very crippling in many cases, was interacting with a neighbor or someone that I would run across at a social setting, where I would be most of the time in the conversation overthinking things I would say, or even after the fact, I'd spend a lot of my time essentially beating myself up about how maybe I was awkward, or what they probably didn't feel like they even wanted to interact with me to begin with, because they'd rather be interacting with somebody else. Like those were all these negative self defeating thoughts that I would have the whole time that I was talking to them. So I couldn't even focus what I want to focus on, which was having a conversation with someone that is either a friend or someone that I want to get to know better or just be neighborly with. And so I've just been able to start recognizing that even in these small little interactions that I have on a day-to-day basis, that kind of white noise, or just the noise that's kind of been there for such a long time, is not something I'm thinking about or focusing on. Not all the time. Like I won't say like I'm perfect yet, but most of the time, like that's why I feel like I'm at the 7, is like a majority of the time, I don't feel like I have to like spend the energy and time and focus on that piece that I have had in the past, because I've been working on more of these other areas to like get to the place where like when I'm in those moments, I'm showing up like the Brandon that I want to show up as. And it's just not something that I have to like feel or think about or like entertain as much, because I've been able to do some of that work with that self-love. So
and it radiates out. Yeah, it's so beautiful. So if you were to give a piece of advice to somebody who is starting in with this somatic work, what would you give? Or if they were in a similar place maybe to you?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think like that's probably is the word that I can think of most, is just having this open mindset, and being willing to explore and try. Things, not all things, like, and I think we talked about this last time, is there are some things like I mentioned today that like really resonated with me and were really powerful tools. Some other things didn't necessarily help me up as much. They were very helpful, but not as in deep, that I use more often now. But everything that I tried and we did and that I was open to, like, was worth it, because I just didn't know what are the things that are the things that I can just take and run with and use in my own life. And so I think that's probably it, is just be willing to try things and experiment. And even if they don't go well the first time, like ask questions and pivot and try again, or look at it in different ways. And so, and it's advice to myself that I want to continue to do, is like, the same things I'm probably giving advice to someone myself like 6 months ago, I want to give myself again, because I'm not there all the way, but I'm grateful for the things I was able to try and do differently or new, that were much very foreign to me, I guess.
Finding the gift in all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Any last thing you want to share or say? Appreciations for yourself?
Yeah, just very, very grateful for the things that I've been able to learn so far. Just grateful for the journey, and for the beauty that it was to just have someone see me and hold space for me, and just have someone that could celebrate me along the way, and just help me in my journey, but finding ways that they could guide me through this. So just appreciate everything you've done along the way, JC, and for the help. And yeah, just couldn't thank you enough for helping me take this next step that I've wanted to take, and how impactful it's been so far. So
it's a special bond. Yeah. Appreciate you sharing your story with folks. yeah, I'm really confident that it's going to mean a lot.
Cool.
Amazing.